Welcome to Born of Love, Episode 4. This is Alexander. What is it that builds a warrior? That gives one the strength and the courage to engage in battle at the risk of losing one's own life in order to save the life of another, even the lives of a whole tribe of people. Each tribe has their warriors and heroes of old, men who while still children humbled themselves before the Great Spirit by seeking a vision sent from on high, by practicing the way of abstinence, the way of suffering, of danger and of endurance of fatigue, by maintaining reverence for all that is sacred, through the preparation of ceremony and the building of character through pain. Ultimately, I believe true warriors are forged in heaven by the hands of our Creator. These are the ones sent to earth to suffer for the sake of a people, because in that great suffering is an even greater salvation. 7 generations from now, the names remembered through history as great warriors won't be limited to the names of men, because history's unsung heroes are finally now going to be heard. This is the era where the women get the glory.
Hello, my name is Tanika Norquay. I'm from the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians. Back when I was a young child, around the age of 7, I had an older brother that preyed on me back then. I was going down to do some laundry in the basement of my parents' house, and as I was sorting through the clothes, one of my older siblings was working out, and he had called me over at some point and pulled down his shorts, and he had asked me to touch his private part, and I started asking him questions about it, and then at some point I told him I didn't want to, and then he grabbed my wrist and forced me to touch it, and then he was moving my arm up and down until he was finished. After all that, he had pointed his hand at me and told me that I couldn't tell anybody, and I had gone up the stairs, didn't know what had just happened, and I was in my bedroom just sitting there thinking about it. Eventually, I didn't tell anybody, and over months had passed, and he had continued to do more and more things to me. He would come into my bedroom in the middle of the night, and he would touch me under the blankets. I had shared a bedroom with a younger sibling, but he would only do it to me. And then I would have friends over sometimes, and eventually he started touching them as well. And at one night, whenever I caught him touching them, I didn't allow my friends to come over anymore, because I was really ashamed and scared that they were gonna judge me for it. From him doing that to me for over a year, I ended up getting preyed on by another predator in the neighborhood who was my older cousin. I walked up to my aunt's house on the 4th of July. We were all getting ready to go to the lake, and everybody was so excited to go. Like, we were excited to ride in my uncle's big old truck he had with this back on the end. So anyway, I had walked up to my auntie's house, and when I knocked on the door, my older cousin had opened up the door. And I said, "Where's Auntie at?" And he said she had gone to the store to get some things for the lake. And I was like, okay, well, I'll come back when she gets back. And he had asked, as I was walking out the door, he had asked if I wanted to play a game, and before I could answer him, he threw a sheet over me and brought me to his mom's bedroom. And while in his mom's bedroom, he sexually assaulted me. And then he gave me some fireworks and some money after and told me that I couldn't tell anybody and that it was our little secret. So after leaving there, I went home and I questioned what had just happened and why it happened. And the next day, I had walked up the block and I remember seeing my auntie and them outside and we had talked. And then my cousin came out and I just couldn't be there. So I walked back home and they only lived a few houses up from us. And I sat in my room and I just stayed there for a couple days at a time. Eventually I ended up going back up to my auntie's house because that's where the games were and where everybody liked to play video games. This time some of my other cousins were up there. And we were all sitting in the bedroom playing video games. And this older cousin would come in and he would like start play tickling with us and trying to like get everybody comfortable. Eventually, at some point, he would get us alone in a bedroom, one or the other, and he would do things to us in the bedroom with the door closed. And then we'd go back out and pretend like nothing ever happened. Each time he would do these things, he would give us money or candy or some kind of toy from his room. Just something to keep us quiet.
About how many of you were there?
This specific day, there was about 5 of us in the house. My 2 older cousins and then 3 neighborhood kids. And there were 2 of us that he would take into the bedroom alone. At the time, I didn't realize that like he was doing the same thing to the other person that he was doing to me. It wasn't until I got older when I started realizing this and the people that I saw with him and I questioned and asked clarification on. Turns out they were a survivor just like me. Same people he would pick up on his 4-wheeler or in his truck. He was working with my uncle and my dad. He was of age and working with them at the time, and he'd come home on the weekends and he would drive his pickup or his 4-wheeler or snow machine, anything in the middle of the housing, and pick up really young girls my age. He was at least 9 or 10 years older than we were. And he would pick up young girls at the time and just take them for rides on the back of his machine or in his truck, and then he would bring them back and drop them off at the park. It wasn't until I got older when I started realizing that those young girls he was picking up at the same time around when he was picking me up were also victims of this predator.
How old were you at that time?
It started whenever I was 8 with this guy specifically, and when he was picking us up, it continued until I was about 13.
And what age were you when you started figuring out it was happening to other people?
Honestly, I was in my 20s when I started realizing all of the other potential survivors of these predators that preyed on me. When I started advocating more, it was in my 20s for child abuse and sexual assault and kids getting molested. Like, I started advocating for that more in my 20s. And so then I was really like triggered by some of the kids' stories because it reminded me a lot of my stories. And then like just thinking back to like my stories and how things happened, I was really digging more into like the people my age and the people that fell to drug abuse and alcohol abuse. Like, I could have easily chose those paths, like some of my childhood friends, but I didn't because I had a very strong support network I got myself involved in church, in ministry at a very young age. I was around 13 whenever I started going to youth group and started learning about God and Jesus and who they were and what they were capable of. And I wanted that for myself. I built a very strong character around myself with the help of God and with the help of all my church friends that I had back then. They were very good to me. They were very supportive. They brought me up in this faith background. And there were times where I struggled with my faith whenever I was facing my identity and like who I was, just because of what I had gone through, you know, like always question like, why would God let this happen? That was a big struggle for me during my faith journey. But I've come to realize that it wasn't God's fault, that people make their choices, you know, and people are going to be who they are. That's not God's fault. That's people making their own choices, you know. So yeah, like I've always been an advocate for our youth, because I know when I was a kid, nobody believed me when I tried to come forward, and I took it upon myself to believe every kid that came to me. And you know, I've wrote reports over the years. I've contacted the police over the years. I've called in on a lot. And honestly, a lot of times when I would call in, people would mistake me for this other girl named Tanika, who was a drug addict and that grew up and lived in this neighborhood, the same neighborhood as I did. And so every time I called, the dispatcher would be like, is this Tanika so-and-so? And I would be like, no, this is Tanika Norquay. So I don't know if they didn't believe me or what, but it seemed like they didn't take my reports very seriously. So that kind of sucked. Even when I would go to child welfare and stuff, you know, I would write reports, and nothing seemed to get done. Or if they did do an investigation, they would never ever talk to the child. They would only talk to the adult of the household. And when you talk to the adult, like most of these adults are gonna like say their kids are seeking attention, or oh, they're out here running around with these other kids and doing drugs and like drinking and running away, you know. They're just gonna make up a bunch of stories about their kids because they don't want to believe that something so bad could happen to their kids, you know. Some parents feel ashamed that it happened to their kids and they weren't there to protect them, and you know, that's not the parents' fault. That's like they can't be with their kids 24/7. Like even me myself, like I don't blame my parents for it. Like they couldn't control me when I was a kid, you know. I was out here, like you would think you can trust the neighborhood because so many of you are family, you know, but even your family you can't trust. Like it's just a thing that happens, unfortunately, you know. People are groomed at a young age thinking it's okay, and they don't see any adults stepping in trying to help or trying to like stop that behavior, so they're continuing that behavior, and it's just normalized, you know. There's a lot of them just don't think that it's wrong.
So going back to your childhood, with that particular individual, were there, as you grew up, were there other people too?
Yeah. So from my cousin abusing me at one point, when he had me in his bedroom, actually, his mom had walked in on us, and she didn't say anything, actually. She opened the door quickly, and I saw her glance in, and then she closed the door and, like, went away, and I was just, like, so confused as to why she didn't stop him from doing it, you know? And so after that day, like, after he had sent me home, I had went home, and the next day, like, I was like, what the heck just happened, you know? I walked up the block again. I saw my aunt and her oldest daughter standing outside of her daughter's house, and I walked up to them, and I was like, hey, auntie, like, why didn't you stop your son from doing what he was doing? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, you literally walked in on us last night, I said, and your son was on top of me, like, with our pants down. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And her oldest daughter was like, what are you talking about? And I went into detail with her older daughter and told her, you know, what had happened. And her older daughter was like a huge spokesperson for our family. Like she knew how to talk, you know. She was always advocating for the family and stuff, but this time she kind of just like dismissed what I was saying and said that I was too young to even know what the heck that was, and she laughed and told me I gotta quit telling my stories. And then eventually after I had confided in her with what had happened, the entire neighborhood found out and they made a mockery of me. They had said that I was seeking attention and trying to say so and so raped me, and that I didn't know what it was, and I was too young. At this point I was only 9 years old. So that really hurt, you know, like for my own family to tell me that I was lying and they didn't believe me. And after that, more predators came out of the shadows and started preying on me. There was 4 neighborhood boys. I was at one of my aunt's houses and we were playing video games, and my aunt was home at the time, but I didn't know she had gone out to go to the store. And so after she had left there, all the boys, so there were 4 neighborhood boys, my younger sister and my younger brother, we were all there playing video games. And after she had left, the older boys had got us into the big master bedroom, which was my aunt's bedroom. And when I realized what was happening, I pushed my younger siblings out the door, and they were screaming and crying and kicking at the door, and 2 older guys held the door shut while the 2 other boys, one held me down and the other one was taking I had worn these suspender shorts. They were actually my favorite because they had the Winnie the Pooh and Piglet logo on them. But they were taking that off from me, and they had got him down there, and they started taking turns, just these 2 individual boys. They were taking turns on me, assaulting me. And then all of a sudden we heard my aunt walk in the door yelling, "Come help with these groceries." And so then we all ran out of the bedroom there, and we were sitting in the hallway, and I was trying to button up my suspender shorts, and my aunt comes around the corner and she says, "What's going on?" And I'm like crying with tears coming down my, like not full out crying, but like there's tears coming down my face. And my 2 siblings, they're still crying from not being let in the bedroom. And to me, like by the look in her eyes, it seemed like she knew what had just happened. And so as I'm struggling to get them up, she goes, "Come on, I got some popsicles for you kids. I'll give you guys one and then give you a ride home." And she gave me and my younger siblings each a popsicle, and she gave us a ride home and dropped us off at home. And after that, we didn't talk about it. We never talked about it. My younger siblings and I talk about it to this day, because it's a big part of my story, and I'm thankful that I pushed them out of the room whenever I did.
Was this in Dunseith or Belcourt or?
All of my abuse happened here in Dunseith.
Okay.
Yeah. But those weren't even the only predators. There was another guy that had preyed on me, and he was another kind of distant cousin. They had lived in the neighborhood for a while, and I used to hang out with his younger sister at the time. And I would go to their house and we'd hang out, we'd play like dolls and stuff. She'd be doing her makeup. I didn't wear makeup at the time. But every time he had walked past me there, he'd brush up on me and try to like slap my butt or grab my butt or something. And like by brushing up, he would like put his middle area up on like my leg or just right behind me or something of those sorts. And then casually, like he would be walking around the neighborhood by himself, and we would just kind of, well, I would be home alone there as he would be walking around the neighborhood. And one day he had walked up to my house there while I was in the backyard, and he had asked who was all there, and I had told him who was all, like it was just me home. And I told him I had to run inside and get some things. So I start walking inside, and he had followed in behind me. I had hoped that he would have left, but he didn't. He followed in behind me, followed me to my bedroom and pushed me on the bed, held me down and started taking my clothes off me. And he ended up sexually assaulting me. And my abuse from him continued for a few months until that family moved out of the housing, like they moved out of the neighborhood.
What age were you at that time then?
Around then I was 11. My abuse actually from all of my predators, like, they didn't prey on me technically at the same time, but it was kind of sporadic for all of them, but it continued it started when I was 7 all the way until I was about 13 years old was whenever it finally started slowing down. There were one of the guys from those 4 guys that held me in the bedroom. One of those guys specifically, he continued the abuse throughout for a few years actually. Anytime he would catch me at my friend's house, he would come over, he would throw on some like VHS tapes that had porn on there, and he would make us watch it with him. And then he would try to get me or another one of my friends into a bedroom by ourselves, and he would assault us. Like, he would try to do whatever was happening on those porn tapes. Yeah, and so eventually, by the time I was about 13, started going to church and getting into youth group and just different things church related. I started realizing how wrong a lot of this was that was happening to me. I ended up starting going to therapy, and that was super helpful for me. I went to therapy through a place called Dr. Eaton's in Minot. And that was a really good start for me. They helped me a lot. They helped me see what was wrong about my situations. And then in high school, I started being able to recognize predators and who predators could be. And there were actually a few older guys that would try to prey on me. I was kind of like a good basketball player, and so then I was getting a lot of attention at the time. And there was this one specific guy, he claimed he was my cousin and that my dad was his uncle. And knowing what my own brother and my own cousins did to me, like, that didn't really mean anything to me, a cousin is a cousin, basically. So anyway, he would message me. He was much older. He would try to get me to come hang out with him. He would ask me what I was doing. He would call me beautiful and like all this weird stuff. And I was just like, at first I was giving him a little bit of attention, but then eventually I'm like, no, this is so wrong. Like, he's clearly trying to get me to go hang out for a specific reason. Just based off the wording and the way he was saying things. So then I started ignoring him, eventually blocked him on social media. It wasn't until I got older whenever I seen him out in bars and stuff, and it just made me really uncomfortable, like just being around him, knowing how he was trying to prey on me when I was in high school. And then hearing like stories about him and watching the way he interacted with other women in the bars and the way he talked to them, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I stayed away from him when I was younger, Even as an adult, like, I had a cop prey on me a few years back, and actually I had called in to the police station and I asked them to send somebody out because some of my nieces were being bullied, and there were a bunch of girls that would come around and taunt them and like throw stuff at our house and whatever. And so I asked them to come out and talk to these kids. Belcourt couldn't come out at the time, so they sent an officer from Dunseith to come check it out. And this officer from Dunseith came up and checked it out, and him and I were talking for the longest time. At this point, I kind of looked a little more femmy. I had long hair, kind of to my shoulder length. And my niece was standing there, and I was explaining to him what was going on. I was showing him messages and stuff, and he would get really close to me, and then he kind of like was caressing my arm and like making me super uncomfortable, so I would like kind of take a couple steps back. And eventually he's like, well, are you the legal guardian? And I'm like, no, but her mom's on her way down. Like, her mom had intellectual disabilities, so I was kind of like a spokesperson to help them communicate with the police officer. So eventually, like, it took her about 20-30 minutes, and this cop literally waited 20-30 minutes. I don't know any cop who would wait that long, but he waited like 20 to 30 minutes for her to come down, and he would just sit there and like talk to me, have conversation. Eventually, when she got down there, she was able to sign the report, and she sat there and she's like talking to the police officer, and eventually this police officer comes back over to me, and he's like, here's my personal cell phone number, and he like put it in my phone with his name. He didn't put the chief of police or anything, right? He just put his nickname, and I was like, okay. And I grabbed my phone back there, and he's like, just call me if you ever need anything. And I was like, all right. And so then he had left, and we had talked about it, my sister and I, and she just talked about how like that specific cop was kind of like a known predator, like to prey on young women and stuff. And I just thought that was really odd for the chief of police to give me his personal cell phone number instead of calling like 911 if there's an emergency, or like calling the police station. I never ever did use that cell phone number, but it's still in my phone, and to this day I think like, why do I have this number? Like, I avoided this cop ever since that one interaction with him. I didn't know his first name. I didn't know him whatsoever until very recently, whenever I started my advocacy for predators in the area. Someone had sent me a picture of him with his real name and their story of him, and I'm like, oh my god, that's his name? Like, I only knew him by this nickname. And when I would hear stories about him throughout the years, I could never put a real name to him. Like, there was this cop and this other cop, and I always thought this other cop's name was his, but when I would hear his nickname, I'm like, oh my god, that's the one that I remember from a few years back, you know? And so, like, I've heard stories about him over the years, but I really did avoid him at all costs. Like, anytime I would see him in public, I would not go near him because of the energy that I got from him whenever I first encountered him on that call, and for him to, like, give me his personal number. Like, I've encountered a lot of cops over my years, from when I was a young child all the way up until my adult years, like, and not one cop has offered me their personal cell phone number. So that was like a really huge red flag for me.
Do you know, is that guy still a cop?
I do know he recently resigned as chief of police in Dunseith and is looking for a job in rugby now. So that's all I know.
Do you want to say his name?
Yeah, his name is Robert Hewlett Sr., but everybody knows him by Roper.
Okay.
Yeah, so I haven't specifically shared that story yet on my public page, but it is coming out soon.
Okay.
Hearing more stories just from whenever I started my thing about that specific cop and another cop that worked under him, like, that's some really scary stuff, because you have these two cops that work in the same station, preying on all these young people, not even just young people, but like these people that are addicted to drugs. Like, they think they're not victims or anything because they're drug addicts. Like, those are the most vulnerable people in our community, because the predators like to prey on them because they're addicted to drugs. And so then they can take advantage of them when they're high or blacked out, you know? They can do whatever they want to these addicts without people believing them when they come forward. But like, they are survivors too. Like, they're out here surviving in this world. Yeah, they might be addicted to drugs and alcohol or whatever, but like, they matter too. Like, their stories matter. They're probably only addicted to drugs and alcohol because of the shame that they endured from other abuse, you know, before they were addicted. Like, my childhood friends, they got addicted to drugs. I chose a different path because of the people that I encountered throughout my life that helped me walk a different path. But they weren't able to, like, they didn't choose the same path as I did. They chose a different path, you know? But that doesn't take away the trauma and the abuse that they endured before they chose that path. And now they're on that path, and, like, they are vulnerable for being preyed on. Like, I know since they've been on that path, like, they've been assaulted, and they don't talk about it and they won't speak on it because they're so ashamed of it, you know? Like, they think, oh, I chose this life of addiction, so now I have to live with my choices and live with the consequences of being assaulted by these people, you know, that are feeding me the drugs and alcohol. But they don't, like, they don't know that, you know, people are out there. People will believe them if they come forward, you know? It's just really hard for them to get out of that mindset because it's so common around this area. Like, people just, like I said, have normalized it for so long that everyone thinks it's normal to live in this lifestyle. Like, if we want a better chance for our kids and our younger kids to, like, have a chance at a better life and getting out of here and go and do something with their lives, like, we need to stop this predatory behavior. Like, people don't realize that's the biggest problem in our community, is all of our young people being preyed on by these predators. So, me personally, like, I've witnessed from when I was young, all of my childhood friends dropped out of school. Social services didn't get involved, so a lot of my childhood friends lived in housing sites. And me personally, I always thought my housing site, like the one I grew up in, was the most neglected. But then whenever I started my faith journey and doing, like, all this other outreach stuff as a young adult, I started going to other housing sites and seeing the same stuff, hearing the same stories, witnessing, and all these kids dropping out at young ages, some as young as 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. Like, all these young kids dropping out of school, and social services isn't stepping in. Why? Like, why are we neglecting these housing sites? Why are we neglecting these kids dropping out at a young age? Oh, their parents are on drugs. They're just following in their parents' footsteps. Oh, they're, like, no, that is not the problem. Like, these kids are being preyed on by older people. These kids, like, there's something going on deeper than the parents' issue. Like, why are we not investigating into that? Why are we not looking into why these kids are dropping out? And it's very rapid. Like, all over you see housing sites. Like, I don't know one person from my age that graduated high school that lived in the neighborhood. Like, not one person. I didn't even graduate high school. I dropped out my junior year and ended up going to Job Corps. And honestly, it was the best thing I did for myself because I got my diploma there. I got a couple trades under my belt. And I decided I wanted to travel and, like, see more of the country. And I did. Like, even though my mom didn't agree with it at the time, like, I would call her up and be like, Mom, I'm in Colorado right now. What? No, you're not. Yeah, I am. Look, and I'd send her pictures and she'd be like, what the fuck are you doing there? Oh, but, like, I would do that, you know, by myself, and it was the best thing I did for myself, because, like, I got to see a lot of the country, you know. I got to go out and explore, but I made that choice to do that, you know, and more people can do it. Like, people just think that we have to be stuck here in this area, you know, because this is where our family's at. But there's so much out there to see in the world, and it just sucks, like, witnessing a lot of the youth that I've worked with think that they have to stay here because their family's here, or that they're not good enough to go out and explore, you know. But they are. They just need someone to believe in them. And like, for me, and for instance, like, all it took was that one person to believe me, and then from there, like, I kept telling my story. And even if there were some people that didn't believe me, like, that didn't stop me from sharing my stories, you know. I'm a very open book. Like, for the abuse that I endured, I had one long relationship that was on and off, but, like, at the time, I had no idea what the heck, like, what to expect in a relationship. I had no idea how to even navigate that relationship. Like, most people would think it was a very toxic relationship, and like now that I'm older and understand a lot more, like, yeah, it was very toxic, but like I didn't know how to navigate that relationship. We both endured a lot of hardship, a lot of abuse and trauma over the years. So neither one of us knew how to navigate that relationship. We didn't have like the best people in our corner to like help us navigate that. But like from the abuse I endured and the abuse that she endured, like we were just too toxic, and neither one of us were able to like, neither one of us felt comfortable enough to seek the help that we needed to help better our relationship. So that relationship didn't work out. Like we hurt each other. We hurt each other a lot, and it sucked. Like, thinking back on it, like, I wish I could take back some things that I did and vice versa. You know, I'm sure she does the same. But, like, I wouldn't change. We had a lot of good times, you know, in that relationship, and I'll cherish those memories until I die, basically. But after that relationship, like, I was really, really broken and started trying to figure out, like, if that was who I was, like if I was really into women, because with that relationship I was like, oh my god, like women can't be with women, you know, it's too toxic, we bash and whatever, you know. So then I really started getting into the Bible and reading, and like at some point, like there was this point, so I was a person who could never be alone. Like I needed that attention and that attraction, and that was just based off the abuse that I endured for all those years.
So 13, that was the last time you were abused in childhood, sexually?
Yes.
And was that when you started therapy too? Was that at 13 or?
That was more closer to 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you started figuring things out, you know, pretty early then too, compared to a lot of people, it seems like. 13,
yeah.
14.
Yeah, and again, that was with the help of like my faith, the people that helped me basically find my faith and on that journey. I had a best friend that I confided in. She lived thousands of miles away, so every summer we would have what they call mission teams come into the neighborhoods, and they would do like different things, like teaching kids about God and like Jesus and like all these different stories, right? And they would just hang out with you. Some of them we got to keep in touch with. I used to, for this friend specifically, I used to run to Senex and like buy these calling cards, because back then you had to use calling cards to call long distance. So yeah, I used to do a lot of that. And she really did help me a lot. She saved my life a lot. You know, I was, throughout the abuse, I was very suicidal. I self-harmed a lot. I did a lot of things, and when I needed someone to be there for me, you know, or if I was really, really struggling, she was just a phone call away, or she was an email away. And so I reached out to her a lot. We were pen pals. We used to write letters to each other a lot. And so I'm very thankful for her friendship. Her and I still are friends to this day. Yeah.
Can you talk a little more about your faith and how that ended up helping you come out of this abuse situation and start understanding, you know, that it wasn't right?
Yeah.
And how that helped heal you?
Yeah, so I would say I'm definitely still healing to this day. As far as my faith journey, like that was a very rocky road for me. It still sometimes is, but it comes down to like the people that I've encountered over the years. They taught me about God, and I realized that like when I was 13, you know, that was really when I really started paying attention to church and what they had to say about God and what he can do for you. I started getting into youth group, and I had some really amazing mentors, some really amazing pastors from the Alliance Church that really helped me kind of like start that faith journey. There were some great people that were there for me all the time.
How did faith help rebuild your view of yourself or who you are, like your identity? Because I imagine what happened to you brought self-esteem issues and other things that, that shatters people's identities.
Yeah. So I struggled with my identity specifically with, like, I was always into women, for as long as I could remember. But with the sexual abuse that was happening from the guys, it was really hard to figure out whether or not, like, do I want to be with a guy or do I want to be with a woman? And growing up, like, being with the same sex partner was frowned upon. And my dad, he's very against same sex everything. He's very strict about it, very open about it, very vocal. So that was really hard, like, growing up and knowing that you were attracted to women but couldn't pursue that because you didn't want to disappoint your parents. And especially with the faith background too, like, everybody said, like, oh, that's totally against the Bible. And so, like, I really struggled with my faith growing up just because of that specific stuff, and that, like, why would God allow this to happen to me, Over the years, though, learning about God, learning about his love, and really feeling his love through, like, the people that he's brought into my life has really changed the way I view things when it comes to, like, the hurt and the pain caused by other people throughout the world. And, like, there are times where I just want to be like, okay, God, like, I've seen enough, I've done enough, like, here I am, just take me, I still struggle with that to this day, but, like, seeing all the hurt that a lot of these kids are going through, like, a lot of kids that I've mentored and that I've looked out for years, like, whenever I started realizing the things that were wrong and how wrong it was and how much people protect these guys over the years, like, I really put myself out there in protecting other kids my age and other kids younger than me, and the kids, like, my nieces and nephews, and just the neighborhood kids in general. Like, I really just wanted to protect them, and keep them safe and make sure that they didn't have to endure what I had to endure growing up. And so having that faith background and having people there for you, like, that know what you've gone through and that are very supportive and encouraging and always wanting to lift you up in prayers has been, like, a really good support system and strength for myself, because me personally, like, I know prayer can work. I know that God is real. So when I was 12, my dad was in a real fragile state mentally, and he was going through his own things. And so then, like, he was just going about all these different things wrong, and it was around the time whenever I came out to him and told him, like, hey, Dad, like, I'm gay. I like girls, I didn't tell him about my sexual abuse or anything. So he's like, no, you don't, he really, like, went off on me. But he didn't believe me because he thought I was just a kid who didn't know any better. So he kind of looked over it, and then when I was 14 again, when I was more in a clear mind and all that, I tried again, and I was like, Dad, like, at this point he was retired, and I was like, Dad, I like women, and he actually walked in on me kissing a girl, and he didn't believe it. And so the next day I went down there and I explained to him, like, that's my girlfriend, and he actually got really, really mad at me, and he disowned me. And that really hurt. It sucked. And so I stayed away from my parents' house for a few months. And then one of my predators and I got into, like, this little brawl. He was older. He was actually my older brother. We got into this brawl at this house party, and one of my older sisters was there. And I confronted him, like I was mad, obviously, and I said something about him sexually assaulting me, and my older sister was like, that was him? And I was like, yeah. And she like right away ran down, told my dad. My dad was pissed and like he wanted to hurt him. And so then when I ended up going to see my dad that next day after that brawl and tried to talk to him, and he heard me out, but he still wanted to hurt my brother and everybody else that did that to me. At this time, he didn't know all of the people. He just knew of my one brother that did that to me. But he didn't know like the rest of the story, and he didn't know that there were more people until my sophomore year of high school. I started this program at UND called Upward Bound, and I was going there, and it was like a 6-week summer program, and the 4th of July was coming around, and I was like self-harming myself. I had the key, and I was like scraping my hands up with this key, and just as like an anxiety thing, or like I don't know, it just helped me, like feeling that sensation in my hands. And so then one of my RAs noticed it, and she's like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, she kind of pulled my sleeve up a little bit, and it was going from my thumb all the way back to my wrist. And she started sharing her story with me a little bit about her self-harming. And I thought that was really, really brave of her to share her story with me. And then she got me to open up eventually, and I started sharing part of my story with her. Shared about the abuse and stuff that I was enduring as a kid, and told her about the 4th of July when my older cousin had sexually assaulted me, and that it was coming close to the 4th of July. And so then I was getting triggered by the date, and she sat there and she held me, and she said how sorry she was, and she told me that she had to tell her supervisor, that she had to tell someone, and that I'll probably be getting a visit from social services, or my parents would be. And I said okay. We were on our last trip there before we went home, because it was a week before we were getting ready to go home, and we were on our weekend trip. And I get a phone call from my mom, and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, we're going on our last trip, and then I'll be home. You know, I was really excited to go home. Totally spaced out everything else that had gone on the week before. And she's like, well, we just got a visit from child welfare and a police officer. And I was like, oh, what was it about? And she explained to me that, like, they got a report of abuse. And they want to talk to you when you get home. And I was like, okay. So I was like really freaked out about it, and didn't really know what to think. I was just scared that I was going to be in trouble and all this stuff. So then when I got home, my dad was home, and I eventually walked straight to my room because I was so scared to face them. And when I went to my room, my dad followed behind me, and I sat on my bed, and my dad sat next to me, and I saw his eyes water up, and I've never seen my dad cry before. And he said, my girl, I want to know what happened. I want to know everything. And I said, you do? And he said, yeah. And I was like, okay. And I started telling him about all these guys that were abusing me. I didn't give them names. I just told them what had happened to me. And he held me, and he cried with me, and we sat there and cried for a long time. And that was the first time that I seen my dad be so vulnerable. Because my dad, like, puts on this front that, like, he's this super strong guy who, like, doesn't cry. So that was a different side of my dad that I seen, and it was nice for a change. Yeah. So after that, my dad, he, like I said, I didn't give him any names, and he fought with all my brothers. Like, he knew Junior was one, but he assumed there were more, so he fought with all my brothers trying to figure out if any more of them did that. All the time. So, like, cops were at our house all the time, and I was playing referee, like, Dad, you gotta calm down, it wasn't them, like, you know it was this guy, so please stop fighting everyone. But, like, my dad, he had it in his mind that, like, all these guys are predators, you know, because some of my brothers were drug users, and he blamed a lot of drug users. And then my cousins, like, he knew right away that one of them was Jordan. And so, like, he had a lot of hate towards this kid, Jordan. And then the other neighborhood guys, he didn't really know that well, but Jordan was his nephew, and Clifford Jr. was his son. So, like, those were the two main ones that he really didn't like. Even to this day, like, he won't even look at his son Junior. Like, he disclaimed him, disowned him.
So, your predators, do you know, are they still around?
Yeah, actually, so one of my biggest predators is Clifford Jr., Petra. He's definitely still around, and he's definitely very active in his predatory behavior. He still preys on young women. He tries to give them drugs and, like, drug them up and do things to them so that way nobody believes him. One of my younger sisters, like, he tried preying on when she was on drugs. He's very, very good at, like, charming people and thinking he's this really great guy, and he has a way with words. So he's still out here preying on young people, specifically young women.
In Dunseith? Or?
In Dunseith area, probably surrounding areas, but I know more so Dunseith. I know of a few young women that have come and talked to me about him specifically. And when I tried confronting him a couple of times, he got really aggressive, tried fighting with me, and eventually turned to, like, me beating him up and him calling the cops and playing victim and acting like I'm beating him up for no reason when there's all these witnesses around seeing him, like, swing first and shove me first. And so, like, he's a really, really smooth talker. He's been in and out of jail a lot. He actually helps a lot of the police officers from Belcourt and Dunseith. What do you call it? He's kind of like an informant for them. And so I personally believe that, like, he gets away with what he gets away because he's informing them on certain people in our area about, like, who's dealing drugs and who's doing all this, like, side stuff. So he gets to tell his side of the story, and they go along with it without believing anybody else, is what I personally think and have witnessed for myself. So yeah, he's out here preying on young women. Like, he still lives with my mom. There are young girls that come and stay at my mom's place who have said that he has tried to touch them while they're sleeping. Even some of my nieces have witnessed him trying to touch their friends while they're sleeping. And one of their friends had said that he walks around in his boxers and in the middle of the night, and so, like, when they're out here or whatever, he tries to come and rub up on them and tries to wink at them and smooth talk them into, like, doing favors for him. And so they get really uncomfortable around him, and when they try to tell someone, like, nobody believes them. So yeah, he's definitely still out here trying to prey on young people, and people are taking his word over any of these other people that are coming forward. And it's super unfortunate because some of these predators are very good with their words, and they are very convincing into playing the victim over the predator. And then we got this specific police officer, Roper, who who talks to women while he's in uniform, who talks to them in very derogatory terms and like kind of just trying to get them to like be at ease what he's saying to them, as far as like talking like dirty, I guess, in a way, thinking that it's okay to talk to women or people in general like that. And then you got like people just laughing at their what they consider jokes. That's not something to joke about, especially as a police officer. Like, those are not things you should be joking about. Like, you're supposed to be out here protecting. And when we got these predators preying on people all over, like, we want to bring awareness to the way especially police officers talk to people in the public. Like, you should not be speaking like that, because then people are gonna like see you as a threat because of the way you're talking to others. And we need police officers, you know, that are willing to step up and protect people from these predators. Like, yeah, you may see this person as some great person now, but like you just don't know what they do in the shadows, or, you know, if they're not allowing you to see who they really are in the open, then how do you know like this person isn't capable of doing something in the dark? And I just really want to like put the light on there that like some predators take their time at building that bond, building that relationship with someone before they actually do like real damage to a person.
Can you talk a little bit about what that's like, the grooming process?
Yeah. So I was groomed by my older brother and my older cousin, and that's where all my abuse endured from. So my older cousin would give me money, he would give me fireworks, he would give me candy. Like, every time he finished with whatever he was doing to me, like, he would give me things, and he would like make me feel like that it was okay for that to keep going. And so like every time he did it, like obviously I was always expecting something. And it got to a point of where like I kept going back because I knew I was gonna get money, or I knew I was gonna get toys, or I knew I was gonna get something from him other than what he was doing to me. And so I felt like it was okay because he was giving me things. But later on, you know, as I got older, obviously I realized that like that wasn't okay, and that was a part of his grooming tactic, was giving me things to like satisfy his needs. And that wasn't okay. Like, I was just a kid and he was the adult in the situation. Like, he should have known better. But sometimes people just can't get out of the way of what they were taught, and they can't get out of the way of thinking like that wasn't okay, you know. Sometimes they just get stuck in that way and they continue preying on others and hurting others, and some don't realize like that is not okay. Some just think that it's normal and it's what people do. But yeah.
You've posted quite a few predators from the Belcourt Dunseith area on your Facebook page. Do you think these guys are also working like together? Do you think are these guys doing things in isolation, or are they networking with each other?
Personally, like from the stories themselves and like the different people that are coming to me with their stories, I think they're doing it in isolation. I think they're like, I do think that some of them may have been groomed to do what they did. Like I said, the stories are from either days, weeks, months, years ago. Like, it goes back. There's someone that shared a story with me from like 50 years ago. There's people that shared stories with me from 30, 40, 20 years ago. Like, a lot of these predators that I posted are from other people's stories. Like, if I didn't say specifically that it was my predator, then they're other people's predators, you know? And the majority of them, yes, like, they have assaulted someone. There's maybe only a handful that have preyed on people, but they're still a predator because they preyed on people in hopes of gaining some kind of some kind of satisfaction, you know, for their own needs. And some people are good at recognizing predators when they try preying on them. Like me specifically, like by the time I got to high school, I was in therapy. I was very involved in my faith background, and like I started being able to recognize predator behavior and the way they communicate and stuff. And so I was very good at reading people by then. And so like if I knew that they wanted more than just to be my friend, then like I knew I needed to stay away from that person, for my safety. So like I do think that a lot of the predators were working in isolation. Like maybe some of them didn't know any better, but it's the fact that they still preyed on someone and scarred someone for life, you know? Like what they did that. Like there's no undoing it. There's no going back and changing it. Like they scarred someone for life, and now that person has to live with what their predator did to them, you know? There's no taking that back. There's just not.
Yeah, and sexual abuse of somebody not only ends up impacting that person in a horrible way, but everybody around them kind of throughout life. Mm-hmm. Do you have any examples of that? How, I mean, you already talked about how it ended up creating your dad trying to battle your brothers, trying to figure out, but what other impacts have it had? I mean, you talked about being in a toxic relationship. Is there any other ways you think it's affected you?
Yeah, it was really hard for me to keep a job for a long time. Like, I had a few full-time jobs, and like certain times of the year I would just get so depressed and so like in my head about like what I had gone through in the past, and it was really hard for me to go to work some days, really hard for me to wake up some days. Even with school, like when I was in high school, it was really hard for me to concentrate on schoolwork. Certain times of the year, it was really hard for me to concentrate on basketball, or like even just to show up. Like it was so difficult for me. I remember being in school and dropping out my freshman, sophomore, junior year. Like each year I dropped out like halfway through the year because it was just really difficult. Once basketball season was over, like I had nothing to help me keep my mind occupied. And I remember trying to reach out to a couple staff members about finding me a safe place to stay, because I just didn't feel safe, you know, being in the neighborhood and all. And one of my coaches said he would try and help me, but then it got to be like months, weeks, months, and then a couple years passed and still nothing. And so then eventually I dropped out altogether and decided like, hey, I need to get out of here. You know, I went to Job Corps, like I said, finished there, got all that taken care of. And in Job Corps, like I was still going through therapy and all that. And like I said, therapy was really good. I was still at Dr. Eaton's office, and they had some really great therapists there that helped me navigate some of the abuse that I endured as a young child. And then work situation, same thing. Like it was really difficult for me to keep my job, and like I remember working at Walmart there a couple times, and it was hard for me to get to work, because like everything that I had to get on my own, like my vehicles and stuff. I'd buy like broke down vehicles, get them a little fixed up, you know, to get me back and forth to work. And I would hold down a job probably for a few months until a certain point of year came, and then I couldn't do it because of my depression was so bad that like it was really hard for me to be around people and to communicate with people. Like, yeah, when people did see me, I was like this happy, jolly person, always smiling, always like trying to lift people up, you know. But deep down, like I was hurting. I was suffering from the stuff that I was going through, and I couldn't really get a good grasp on it to like be out there in the public and feeling like I'm like this fake person, you know, putting on a show for everybody, trying to act like I'm happy, but really I'm not happy, you know. But then a few years down the road, like I started working at this labor company. It was where you can go in, sign up for a job for the day, kind of like make your own schedule basically, you know, go in when you want, when you feel like it, work. And get the job done. And so that's what I did. I did day labor work for probably 6-7 years, and throughout those years I would come back to Botno and work actually at the Bible camp north of Botno. And honestly, that was the most life-saving place for me. Like, every year for 6-7 years I came back every summer specifically to go work there. Like, I'd be out traveling the country, working these day labor jobs all over, but that one place brought me back here. That place saved my life when I was younger. I had a counselor who taught me about Jesus, and his love for me and how he died on the cross for me, and that was really the very first time that I heard about Jesus, and what he did. But back then I was really young and I didn't take it as serious, It wasn't until my teenage years that I really started taking that serious. And I still reminisce back to when that specific counselor would talk to me about it, because I would be sitting under a tree, this big tree at camp, and all the kids would be playing, having fun. Meanwhile, I'm sitting off by myself, and this counselor comes up to me and she's like, "Hey, can I sit with you?" And I would be like, "Sure." And she'd sit next to me and she would just open up this little pamphlet she had, and she'd start showing me pictures of God and start talking about Jesus. And it was really cool, that someone saw me, just sitting off by myself, and they wanted to come sit by me, just to sit by me. Like, that was really important. And it stuck with me, like, even to this day. Like, I'm getting really emotional talking about it, because that counselor don't know how much of an impact that was on me, years later. I did actually get in touch with her and reach out to her, and we've met up a couple of times in my adult years, and she really is. She was an angel back then, and she really is an angel to this day. Like, she's just an amazing person, a beautiful person who I'm very thankful God put in my life at the time that he did, But yeah, so like, I'd go back every summer as an adult to go work at this Bible camp, and that love that counselor showed me was the same kind of love I wanted to show everybody that entered that campsite, And I did too. I had a lot of love to give, and I gave a lot of love there at that camp, and I was able to talk about God, and let people know that he's there for them. Like, that conversation I had with my dad, had I not prayed about it beforehand, like, I don't think him and I could have ever had that conversation, And after he and I talked and cried that day, he asked me, like, never in a million years would I ever imagine my dad picking up a Bible, because he always frowned, like, "No, you guys can't go to church. No, you guys can't go to these camps, blah, blah, blah." Because, like, he grew up in an era where kids were getting abused by pastors and, fathers and sisters and whatever, So he grew up in that era, and so then he would, like, ban us from going to church and going to all these youth group stuff. But we would still sneak going, because he wasn't always home, he was always working weeks at a time, and would only come home every other weekend or something like that. So, like, he wasn't always home to, like, keep us from going, but my mom, allowed us to go. And honestly, it was really good for us for the most part. But yeah, so totally got off topic there, but
That's okay.
But yeah. So when my dad and I had that conversation there, and after we cried and whatever, he looked at me and he said, "My girl," he said, "do you have a Bible that I could borrow?" And honestly, that was like, I could never imagine him asking for a Bible, because I'm like, wait, the guy who, like, banned us from going to church and doing all this stuff, like, wants one of my Bibles? And I had a bunch of Bibles, because, like, I had a lot of church friends, and they'd always give me, Bibles, and I would read them and just sit there, and my dad would always ask me why I'd read that crap and whatever, And so he wanted to read it, and so I gave it to him, and he did. Like, he read that thing over and over and over, and, like, sometimes when you read the Bible and you get into it, like, by yourself, and you don't really have, like, a study partner to, like, help you kind of question certain stuff, then you kind of get, like, mixed messages, and that's what he was getting, was a lot of mixed messages. But the fact that, like, he was reading it, made me really happy. And he would jot down on like sheets and tablets of paper. He'd always need a tablet because he wants to rewrite the verses over and over and rewrite the Bible, you know. Not like rewrite it in his own words. Actually, he did eventually start doing that, you know. But like he would rewrite things so he could like memorize them for himself. But anyway, so yeah, that was really cool. And for a few years, like him and I debated back and forth about homosexuality and all this stuff because he was still so against it. But he kept blaming what happened to me when I was younger for the way I am. And you know, after high school, I did dabble a little bit in like seeking out men and seeking out like that satisfaction of what was happening to me when I was younger, you know. I was seeking them out on websites and just going out and having random sex with guys, you know, just to see if there was anything there. But it never did like fully satisfy me to like where I needed to be satisfied. And so like it felt wrong for what I was doing, you know, just going out having sex with all these random people. And so then eventually, like with my relationship of however many years, you know, being on and off, like obviously a big part of that was we both went through some abuse, you know, and never did get the help that we needed for it to even navigate a healthy relationship. So at some point, like, I got pulled away from that relationship, and honestly I think that was all God's doing, because I had met a friend who was really into ministry and stuff. She also did not believe in homosexuality. She grew up in a very Pentecostal or like that genre of church, Baptist, I guess. And she was a really amazing friend, you know. I was like, man, this is the friendship that I want, you know, like someone that's gonna help me build my faith. And so like I started getting into her ministry, and she did a lot of youth ministry with a lot of the youth that I worked with. And actually I lived in Grand Forks at the time, but I ended up moving back here to help with her ministry because I really liked how they were going about things and how they were all about our kids, you know, and just making sure they had a safe place to go. So I started helping with her ministry. It was at the Church of God. And at some point, like, I was really struggling here again with my identity, my sexuality, because again, I was on these apps, you know, seeking out guys. But at some point, throughout helping her with her ministry and like doing my own Bible study and stuff, and like going to youth groups and Bible studies, or young adult groups, I guess they called them. We were reading from like the book of Romans and like some other books and just kind of jumping around. And me personally, I was like going through reading it, and then all of a sudden, like, I had no cravings for sex. I had no cravings for either man or woman. Like, I absolutely had no cravings. Like, it was the most weird time of my life. But like, I felt at peace just being by myself, and I knew then, well, in that moment, like, I felt like God was changing me. Like, oh my God, you know, I'm not gonna be gay anymore. I was like thinking like I'm not gonna be into women anymore, and then all of a sudden, like, that was going for months and months. And my best friend at the time was the youth pastor, and she was really amazing. Like, we would take family trips to go see her family and hang out, you know, and I really enjoyed hanging out with her family. Like, they were amazing people. I felt welcomed with her family. They knew my history of being with women. And so, like, you know, they were against it, but they didn't question it. Me being with, like, hanging out with their daughter or whatever. I mean, I don't know if they questioned it or not, or if they didn't want her hanging out with me because I was a lesbian. But yeah, so like I shared my story of how like I felt God was working with me, and maybe he was changing me to be straight, you know. I really thought God was like, I didn't have these cravings for men. I didn't have these cravings for women, because I really thought God was like working on something and changing me to be straight. And so I shared that with her mom. And so her mom was like, that's really cool, you know, that's really great, that's really good. And then all of a sudden, like, another few months had passed after that, and my friend and I, like, we had always gone on camping trips, and we had always gone on, like, these random road adventures and stuff, right? Well, then one day, when we were on a trip together, like a weekend trip together, it was like that tension between us, like, just came together, and we had never, like, I feel like we had never had any, I don't know what you call it, but anyway, we ended up kissing, and it was like something sparked there, and I'm like, this is insane, what is going on? Like, my mind was spinning, and I'm like, oh my god, what is your family gonna think? Oh my god, wait, I had no cravings for any of this or anything whatsoever, like. And then over time, like, her and I, like, we struggled with it for a long time. Like, my wife is from Missouri, and she came up to do mission trips, and never in a million years would I have ever imagined marrying this woman, because of how much she was into her faith, and knowing that, like, her family and herself was totally against, like, same-sex anything. And so, like, when her and I did start dating, like, obviously we kept it on the down low for the longest time, and people just assumed we were dating because of how close we were, but that was just the friendship that we had built prior to us dating. And so it took a long time, just because of everything going on and the way, like, our families were and stuff, before we actually disclosed that we were dating.
What was her family's reaction to that?
Yeah, well, I don't want to speak too much on her family's reaction, because that does go with her story, but
Okay.
it was not a very good reaction, you know, unfortunately.
Thinking about kids again and what's happening to them, who do they go to if they're being sexually abused?
Nowadays, it's so hard for kids to even trust anybody in their own families, because a lot of families want to keep that kind of abuse hidden. They don't want people to know that someone in their family is being abused, because of a lot of shame that comes with it. Like, a lot of people blaming, oh, well, where were the parents when this was happening? And my take on it is, it's not the parents' fault. Like I've said, parents can't be with their children 24/7. Like, I don't blame my own parents for what happened to me when I was younger, because they couldn't be with me 24/7. Like, my dad worked all the time. My mom also worked. She went to, like, school with my younger siblings, you know. My parents did a lot for me, but they just couldn't control my every movement 24/7, you know. They thought they could trust my aunts and my uncles and my cousins and everybody else that lived in the neighborhood. They thought that people were gonna look out for their kids, you know, throughout the neighborhood, but that's not always the case. Like, that kind of abuse, like, I would say 70 to 80% of child abuse does come from someone that we know, like, and people don't want to believe it, you know. In grade school, I was always taught, like, stranger danger, like, don't trust a stranger. I was never taught, like, don't trust your family, don't trust your cousins, don't trust, you know, your aunts and your uncles, don't trust your parents. Like, a lot of these, even some people that have shared stories with me have shared how their own mom or their own dad, like, molested them or sexually assaulted them. Like, this abuse can come from anybody. It's not just a stranger thing, like, and it's really difficult, like I said, for kids to come and talk to anybody, because they just don't know who they trust. Nobody's open about it. Nobody talks about it. And so if, like, nobody's talking about it, like, who do we know that we could trust? If it's our siblings doing it to us, like, is our parents going to believe us as the children, or are they going to believe the older sibling? Like, if it's our cousins or our aunties going to believe us, or are they going to believe their kids, you know? Like, even when I came out about it, and, you know, my mom knew about it, but it's not that she didn't believe me. She just didn't want to believe that it was happening to me, you know? And I don't fault her for that, because the way she grew up, and they nobody stepped in and did anything for them. Nobody wanted to do anything because they didn't know any better. Like, people don't think that it's wrong. They think it's just normal and you should brush it under the rug and forget that it happened. Like, people can't just forget that that stuff happened. It affects them all throughout their life. Like, they're gonna struggle with it all throughout their lives, with their relationships, with their jobs, with their families. Like, they're gonna struggle with it, with their kids. Like, it's a struggle that never stops.
In your experience trying to help kids, you've said you've called cops a bunch of times or whatever else, dealing with the systems that are supposed to help kids. How do you navigate all of that? Because it sometimes seems like there's a kid in a situation and they're not getting any help, even when people are like, there's an awareness of what's happening.
I think there needs to be better training for police officers, police stations, and for social services, specifically when it comes to these situations. Because I don't believe, like, I don't know if there's a law against it for them to specifically pull the children aside and talk to them individually. I don't know if there's a law against it for social services to do that. But I don't think that they should just only talk to the adult. And sometimes it's hard for children to talk to social services when their parents are in the room with them, because sometimes if a child, like, for instance, I had reported a case where the child had already told her parent and the parent didn't do anything about it. So then the child confided in me, and so I tried to do something about it, but then social services only talked to the parent and didn't want to talk to the child, and didn't talk to their child, and the parent talked a really good game about their kid being on drugs and drinking all the time and running away and all this other stuff. And so then social services ended up closing that case and didn't further their investigation. So when parents don't believe their own children, they talk a really good game to social services, and the social services don't do any further investigation. But I personally think that they need to follow up with the children and, like, pull the children aside and talk to the children and get their sides of the story.
So was that child just then to fend for his or herself?
Yeah, so the children in that home were to fend for themselves, and then they obviously, like, started blaming me because then you have parents that go back and emotionally abuse their children for trying to report what had happened to them. And so then the child suffered from all that emotional abuse as well, of like, this is your fault, you want your siblings to get taken away, you want them to get split up and go into homes where other people can play with them, kind of thing. And that was the fear that was instilled in me when I was younger by my aunts, by my own family members, was like the same fear that these kids are facing today of being split up, the same fear of them going into different homes. And I think even some of the parents fear that as well, because I think even today some of the parents, like some of those same parents, that kind of fear was instilled in them when they were younger. So now they're like, it's a cycle of like putting that fear into their children now. And now as those children get older, it's probably going to go into their children. So, like, it's a matter of breaking that cycle of fear of people coming forward and, like, trying to get help for their kids, you know, without fearing that their kids are going to get taken away. At least that's from my take with this specific family, is that I don't know what happened to the adult to handle it the way she did. And a part of me, like, I do feel sorry for her, but I hurt for those children for having to, like, endure all that by themselves, you know? Like, the way the mother handled that situation is the same way a mother handled the situation of when I tried to confide in them. And I had hoped that they would handle things differently if they had their own children, but they didn't. It's just fear and shame that is instilled in them from when they were younger, you know? Mm-hmm. At least that's how I feel it is. It's a fear and shame that people need to try and get over to help their kids and their grandkids.
When did you start posting predators on your Facebook? How long have you been doing that?
Only about 2 months, I would say, maybe a little over a month. I actually started it because a couple years ago I had a niece that was sexually assaulted. We gave all the information to the cops. I had to take her all the way to Minot to get a sex kit done. And then what had happened was she was being lured out on Snapchat by a profile with like a fake profile. And so like we called it in. That literally broke me because this is my kid. Like, this is someone that saved my life when I was younger and going through the abuse. Like, here we have young kids raising babies, you know? And I was one of those young kids raising a baby, and she was one of those babies that I looked after. And so, like, as I got older, like, she calls me mom to this day. And when that happened, it broke me. It really broke me for her to show up on my doorstep in the middle of the night, like crying. And instantly it was like a part of me just broke, you know. She's a kid. And so when she's crying, she couldn't talk or anything. And so I bring her into the house, I hold her, and I wait till she could talk. She's someone with an intellectual disability, so it took her a long time to like tell me what happened. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know how to react. But right away I called 911. Well, I called the police station and all these cops showed up. I gave them all the information and gave them the Snapchat. And I don't know what kind of resources these cops have or anything. But to me it was like they didn't take it very seriously. Because you could easily like find a Snapchat account or find someone, you know, using that. But to me, they did not do any kind of investigation. They did not look into this Snapchat account. They claimed, it could be anybody. Yeah, well, it's not that hard to trace an IP address. It's not that hard to lure someone out, you know. So probably about 6 months passed. And I did my own investigation because I knew they weren't going to do anything. I found the perp that did it to my niece. I'm still waiting for them to do anything. It's been over 2 years. And then, so after that happened to her though, I went right away and I filed for full legal custody because her mom actually had passed away a year before her sexual assault. So she had just lost her mom. So I filed for custody of her and her sister. Her sister's an adult now technically, who is also have intellectual disabilities. She's 19 now. But just this past year, she was sexually assaulted by a neighborhood guy. Actually, just a few months before I started this, like advocating and posting predators. So what had happened with her was this guy has been grooming her for a couple of years, like messaging her back and forth on social media from the time that she was a teenager up until she turned 18. And his baby mama knew about it, apparently, that he was with for some years. And so anyway, he had been grooming her on social media. She had been going to visit up there at their place. And by grooming, like, he was just telling her nice things, making her feel good about herself, and like bringing her things, buying her stuff. Apparently they were like buying her cigarettes and all this stuff, right? Making her feel comfortable with them. But he had got her one night, and she was 18 at the time. Again, an intellectual disability, so she doesn't really comprehend a lot of things that people tell her. And he had picked her up and picked up 2 other people in the neighborhood. They went up to this trailer house somewhere north of Dunseith, and they dropped off the 2 people in this trailer house, and they had been parked there. And he sexually assaulted her in the truck. And she said she had blacked out at some point because she doesn't remember everything. But when she got home here, she stumbled into the door and went to the bathroom and noticed her pants was drenched in blood. And she freaked out, yelled for another one of the girls. They came in and looked, and then they freaked out and woke their grandma up. And grandma came in, looked, and there was blood everywhere. They called the cops. They showed up, and one of the detectives that showed up was like, literally, word for word, holy shit, it looks like a murder scene in here. And there was just blood drenched down her pants, blood all over the bathroom. And as she was the ambulance was here too, as she was walking to the bedroom to go change, she fell over and fainted, like blacked out. And one of the ambulance drivers like had to help her get changed, And they packed up her clothes and stuff, put it in a bag. The guy ended up getting arrested that Friday and then got let go that Monday. And we're still waiting to hear back as to whether or not they're pressing charges. Like, they haven't contacted the family about anything.
They performed a rape kit and...
We had to take her all the way to Minot to do the rape kit. But for that amount of blood, the guy ended up messaging her and asking her to tell people that he didn't rape her. And that he didn't rape her and he wanted it. Like, there's screenshots of the messages anyway. And so then the baby mama has also been in contact with her, and like they've been trying to play buddy friends with her, and she has an intellectual disability, so like it's really hard like for us to tell her how wrong that was and for her to comprehend it. So my fear is that the case is going to get thrown out if there's actually a case. Like, according to the baby mama, they dropped the case, they dropped the charges, but we don't know that because the detective hasn't gotten back to us. Like, I personally left messages on his answering machine and tried contacting him, but we still haven't heard anything. And they say since she's an adult, like, she has to speak for herself. Like, how does someone with intellectual disabilities who doesn't know how to properly communicate speak for themselves? So yeah, that's a little frustrating that, like, a lot of these cases kind of just sit on the desk. Like, I've even heard personally, since I've started advocating for a lot of these people and the predators in our area, that they're so compiled with cases that it's going to be years for them to get to any of the cases, basically. So that's really unfortunate. So then you got all these predators just roaming free after being accused and then preying on others, and they're thinking like, oh, nothing happened to me this time, so why not just go out and keep doing it, Like, at least that's how I see it.
Yeah, it seems to me the whole system, the whole legal system and law enforcement system has to be totally reformed in regards to sexual assaults and rapes and everything, because the way it works now, kids and women keep getting raped as they're building cases and whatever. Like, more and more people are getting destroyed, and it's totally inadequate. Can you talk about being triggered?
Yeah. So there's one specifically, like, I've personally been able to forgive all of my predators up until recently. Like, whenever I found out that my brother's still out here preying on individuals, especially on young women, like, that really triggered me, like, because I was able to forgive my predators years ago. Like, I'm still open, like, I was still open about talking about my abuse and stuff and still naming my predators, but that doesn't mean I didn't forgive them. Like, I was able to forgive them for what they did to me. But then hearing that my brother, Clifford Jr. Putra, is still out here preying on individuals, like, that triggered me so much, because, one, like, after everything that I had gone through, like, and then hearing and knowing that he's still out here abusing people and preying on people really, 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 like, screwed me up, because I felt like I didn't do enough, I felt like maybe this is my fault that he's still out here doing stuff, But then I think back on it and I'm like, no, I tried. Like, my cases were in the system. they just never went to trial. They just never made it to court, and that's not my fault, you know? So one of my biggest triggers right now is having to, like, see him. Like, I come back home very often to make sure that some of the kids are okay, like some of the kids that I've been looking out for over the years. And so when more and more of these young people are coming to me specifically talking about Clifford Jr., or even just their predators in general, it's really hard for me to, like, do anything, because the system is not stepping in and trying to, like, open any kind of investigations into these people, you know? But another big trigger for me was whenever one person that I confided in, and didn't believe me and made a mockery of me, when one of her children came forward and confided in me and I tried to get them help, like, she kind of did the same thing to her own child, you know, and basically didn't believe her or didn't take any kind of action to help her child, and still wanted a relationship with her child's predator, like, still allowed her child's predator to come around the home and make them feel uncomfortable, you know? And so that was a huge trigger for me, was, like, not being able to help that child the way they needed the help, you know, or not being able to help the mother figure out a better way to handle the situation when her child came forward. And then there's certain days, like the 4th of July, I still can't find, you know, how people find joy in the fireworks and stuff like that. That's a huge day for me. That's super triggering. Even just leading up to it. Christmas time, you know, I love spending Christmas with the family and stuff. Just holidays in general are really hard, because when I was able to forgive my brother for what he had done to me, like, it was nice to have the whole family around. And ever since I started advocating about predators and stuff, he's not allowed. Like, we have the, like, family stuff now at my sister's house, and he's not allowed there. Even it's really hard coming to my mom's house, because he lives at my mom's house, and it's really hard to be here or come visit her, because I don't know if he's gonna be there or not, you know, and I just can't look at him. I can't be around him, and I know he's been, like, trying to spread all these rumors about me throughout the neighborhood and throughout the community, but the fact is, you know, he's still a predator, and a lot of people know it. And so it's really hard. Like, even, just being here at my mom's house is the hardest, to be honest. I love my parents, I love my family, and a lot of my family, you know, my close family, like my dad, my siblings, they all support what I'm doing, you know, they're all for it. They all know what I've been through. They all know how hard it's been for me. And so, like, they're all in support of it. I've asked all of them, like, I know there's going to be negative stuff on social media, and I've asked them not to get involved in that, not to comment on anything or like or laugh at anybody's stuff. I said, it's not worth it. Like, that negativity is going to be all over. I said, the only thing we're going to do is spread awareness for this stuff, and we're not going to let the negative feedback get to us. We're just going to let people be who they want to be, and if they want to support these predators and enable these predators, that's on their part. We don't need any of that. We don't need to put ourselves in their shoes, you know. We don't need to get one up on them, or however people want to say it these days. So my family has been really good about not commenting on that negative feedback, you know. I mean, I have friends out there that have been very supportive and very outspoken on these negative comments and stuff, but, like, that's them, you know. That's not my family. And so that's why my family's been pretty quiet on my social media accounts, is because they know I don't want them to get involved in that way. The only thing I need from them is the support that they're showing me and the love they're showing me every time I see them, or, you know, just a phone call away or a FaceTime away. Like, that's the only support and love that I need from them. Like, I don't need them putting themselves in danger on social media, you know, and I don't need them to become targets of all the people around here because they still live in here. They still live here, you know, and I can't be here to protect them from that.
When you do have triggers, can you tell a little bit about what the effects are mentally, physically, and then how you get through that time?
Yeah, so when I do get triggered, I mean, I get depressed sometimes, you know, still, and I just want to lay up in bed, kind of curl up in bed and stay in bed all day. And my wife's really good about like getting me out of bed, getting me to do things, and we got a couple young ones, and she's always wanting to go outside with them or go to the library or just like go and do things as a family. We'll go to the park. She's really good about finding something for all of us to do so that way we can hang out and not really kind of be cooped up, you know. She's just really good at keeping my mind busy. And if like when the time comes, like her and I can sit down, we can have a conversation and we can talk about what's bugging me and why it's bugging me and what we can do to like keep that from, you know, keep that from kind of lingering longer than it needs to be. Sometimes I'll just sit down at the table and I'll start working on a puzzle and I just get zoned in for a couple hours, few hours at a time, and I'm just doing a puzzle, and that helps a lot, you know, just really keeping my mind focused on something, anything. And so there are times where like I go kind of dark on social media for sometimes days or a couple weeks at a time, and that's just because I'm taking a break from everything and trying to kind of regroup myself, you know, rejuvenate on what I'm doing, and figure out my next steps and how I can better advocate for people, you know. So yeah, it's just a matter of finding some hobbies and going about my day. But my wife is pretty good at seeing when I'm feeling down or when something's bugging me, and pretty good about making sure I help myself and take care of myself. So
do you think for those who don't have really anybody like that, you think it's a matter of refocusing the mind? That's what's helped, and maybe it's finding somebody to talk to?
Yeah, I think the most important one is finding someone that you can talk to and someone that you can trust. And I know like nowadays it's really hard to find people that you can trust. I know some of the people that have reached out to me, if they didn't have anybody that they could talk to, I specifically was like, well, if you ever want to talk or need to talk, like, I am obviously open to like being there and listening to people, you know, because sometimes it just takes someone to listen to you as well. Like, you don't really need any advice, you don't really need any like whatever, you know. Some like me personally, I don't ever need any advice. I just need to be able to vent to someone sometimes just to get that off my chest. And I do have a very close group of friends that I can just vent to, and just talk about whatever's bugging me, you know. And those friends were very hard to find. It took some years to find some friends like that, you know, someone that wasn't gonna go behind and be like, oh my gosh, this happened to Tanika, and, you know, just like try to spread rumors or try to switch up my words and change my words and say something completely different than what I said, you know. So those friends were hard to find, but I'm very thankful and lucky that I found those friends that I can really trust.
Can you talk a little bit about, since posting predators on your Facebook, the type of backlash you've received?
Yeah, I've actually received more support in my inbox than I did like people backlashing. I'm sure the backlash came with like more of out in public or on other people's social medias, but I don't really see other people's social medias. I don't scroll through my social media a lot. I mostly just post what people are sharing with me, and then I leave it at that. Sometimes I don't even see like who shares my stuff or what they're saying about it. I try not to get too involved in social media on that aspect, just so I can keep my mind on what I'm doing and like trying to more so bring light to what I'm doing. I don't want to pay attention to the negative feedback, because then obviously that's gonna fuel negative energy, and I don't want that for myself. I want to look at like bringing change to the community in the way people see predators and the way they handle these kinds of situations. If someone were to come forward and say this happened to me, like I would like for people to know that it's okay for them to talk about it, that people shouldn't feel ashamed of their kids or their grandkids or their nieces and nephews coming forward with their stories, you know, because that shame is not for us, for our family members to carry. That shame is specifically for the predators to carry, and that's who the shame should be on, not the survivors of the abuse, you know, not the families of the predator, not the friends of the predator. Like that shame is specifically for the predator and for what they did, no one else. But yeah, I have received, I guess, a couple individuals like have come forward and said like, there's no way this happened, there's no way this guy is a predator, like I've known this guy for this amount of time and there's absolutely no way. Or there's one, my specific predator, his sister-in-law and his girlfriend and their family have been very vocal about like, oh, she's lying, and he didn't grow up in the housing and this and that, but they did live out here, you know, for a period of time, and it literally takes seconds for someone to get assaulted. Like if you're not with them 24/7, you have no idea who anybody is, what anybody is capable of. And then there's another one like with the cop, like people think, oh, he's such a nice guy, he does all this stuff, like he's very great when he's around us, and like we know him, we've been friends with him for this long. Or his now girlfriend, who's only been with him probably for a couple years. But yeah, they just think he's like this really amazing guy and he could never do anything like that. And that just a lot of them, like a lot of the predators that have been called out, like people defending them because they're this really great guy that they see, you know, or and so it's really hard that like people think that like certain individuals aren't capable of it. Like just because they don't do drugs or anything doesn't mean they're not capable of it, you know. Anybody is capable of anything. It doesn't matter if they're on drugs, if they're on they're an alcoholic, or if they're sober. Like anybody is capable of causing harm onto another individual. And that's what people are not understanding, is they're only seeing these people, like these predators, for what the predators want them to see. Like if they want you to see that they're a great guy, that's the kind of persona they're going to put on in front of you. But like when it comes to preying on individuals, like they're not gonna see that these predators are preying on certain individuals. Yeah, so like that cop specifically, whenever I first named him as a predator, he was going around on his own social media talking about like, oh, it's just some drug addict from the housing, no life with no job, bumming around kind of thing. Like he was referring that to me. And I'm like, first of all, I have my own place. I don't live in the housing anymore. I've had a job for over 5 years. And I'm not a no-life. Like, I'm pretty well known for advocating for youth and the people of my community. And so, like, for him to, like, say all that stuff about me, like, clearly he doesn't remember me from that one incident, like, that one time that I encountered him. And like, yeah, it just goes to show like how oblivious like some people are, you know. Like all of those things he named about that individual being a drug addict, no life from the housing, all that is the stuff that the other Tanika was. Like I don't. Okay, so like I don't know her personally, I don't know her story or anything, but I know like with all that stuff people were saying about me or trying to say about me was like nothing. I've never been a drug addict. I've never been in trouble with the law. Like I've always been an advocate, and there were times where I would have a target on my back for being an advocate for people of our community, you know. People would try and talk trash about me, and like, okay, talk the trash you want, but that isn't gonna stop me from like doing what I'm doing, because I know how bad things are in our community. Like I've lived here for over 20 25 plus years. Like, I know, I've observed, I've witnessed a lot of neglect and abuse that goes on in our community. Like, and I know how hidden it is. I know how people want to keep it hidden and not speak on it. Like, there's just so much that people can talk on, you know?
And a lot of what you're describing is going on all over Bismarck, or all over North Dakota and South Dakota, everywhere really. The basketball thing, you talking about a older guy going after the basketball girl. I just was told by somebody in Pine Ridge Reservation that was going on. There was a tribal, somebody who works for the tribal government was actually texting one of the high school girls and trying to befriend her in a weird way. And then I've been told, I don't know which chief of police of Bismarck, but one of Bismarck's chief of police had been paying to have sex with some of the girls being trafficked. So this is not isolated for people who are kind of unaware. This stuff is actually more prominent than one might realize.
Yeah, and it's really hard, especially when you have police officers out here preying on individuals, because then you have their brothers and sisters in arms who are like, oh no, that can't be them, you know, like sticking up for their police officer brothers and their police officer sisters. And I'm just like, how do you know? Are you on shift with them 24/7? Like, you're not around them 24/7. Like, how do you know they're not out here preying on individuals, vulnerable individuals at that? Like, you really don't know. And then when you have these police officers out here preying on individuals, like, who are you to trust? When they're out here doing their jobs and whatever, or doing their jobs, you know, and they have all their sisters and brothers in arms, and you see all these police officers standing together with these predator police officers, and you're just like, how can you turn that into the cops? How can you make a report when you got certain cops that are out here preying on individuals, and you just don't know who in the system that you can trust to even write that report? Like, you just don't know who you can trust these days when you got 1, 2, 3, 4 cops out here preying on individuals, and when their names are coming up like all the time about preying on individuals, like, you just don't know. Like, if they've been doing it for years and nothing's gotten done about it, then what's the point of writing those reports, you know? Like, that's just how it is. People are too scared to write reports because nothing's gonna get done about it, because you don't know which cop is gonna take you serious, or you don't know which prosecutor is gonna want to take up that case, because it is a cop and they don't want that bad reputation.
And I think that's exactly why what you're doing is important, is because the voice of the people who are being abused has to be heard. It's the only way I think that things can change. But there's been no platform for them to speak. And that's why people like you are really going to make a difference and turn this whole thing around.
I hope so. You know, I just want people to, like, start talking more open. Once we start talking more openly about it, then the more predators are going to see, like, oh my gosh, these guys are serious, you know? They're really trying to, like, cut down on this behavior, and, like, I'm hoping it'll keep them from wanting to prey on other individuals. But at least if parents and adults are talking more with their children about it, then the children can become more aware of it. But if we're not all talking to the children, like, people think kids are too young to know what's going on. I was 7. Like, I had no idea what the heck any of that was. And nobody's, like, talked to me about it. And so, like, I see even at even younger ages, like, kids are, like, pulling down their pants and, like, playing with their thing, you know, or, like, trying to show other kids, you know, like, they're learning at a very young age what this stuff is. Like, someone is showing them what to do, you know, and nobody is seeing that. Instead, they're yelling at their kids for, like, touching themselves or for touching other kids. I'm like, well, who is teaching them that, you know? Like, they're sitting here swatting at their kids and yelling at their kids, and so kids aren't coming up and talking about it because they got hit or they got swatted at or they got yelled at for people, or for them showing something to another kid that someone showed them or taught them, you know? Meanwhile, people should start talking to their children at a younger age and letting them know that it's wrong, so that way these kids feel comfortable enough to like come and tell them who's doing it, you know. But even then, like, people need to be gentle with those conversations. They need to be patient with those conversations. They need to like watch their tone with those conversations. A lot of people I grew up with, even now adults, when they talk to their kids, like I see them screaming and yelling at them and like talking to them with anger, you know, and I'm like, that's not the way to go about those conversations. Like, why is he doing it? Oh, you know, it's this person, but then who did it to that person? Okay, so like, you need to have those conversations. You need to be able to confront the adults of those other children. Like, you need to be able to write reports. You need to be able to like make sure you document those conversations and document like what your kids are doing, because someone is obviously showing them. Like, I didn't know to document like all this stuff, you know. I'm just learning about documenting it and making sure you have a paper trail of who did what, you know, so that way if there's anybody else that comes forward, like, you're gonna be able to have other people to back you up on that. Even then, like, me personally, it should only take one person to come forward and share their story, and then people should like believe, you know. Like, nobody believed all that happened to me from all these individuals. I had a childhood friend who recently came forward about one of my predators. And then I had another childhood friend who came forward about another one of my predators, like, just within this last week. And I'm just like, that is crazy. Like, I knew it was happening. Like, I knew there had to have been other survivors out there, you know, but it's really hard, like, for people to come forward because nobody ever believes them, and nobody believes that it could happen to someone at 4. Like, I remember every single kid in my kindergarten class. Like, a lot of them, like, one left after kindergarten, one left after 2nd grade, couple left after 3rd grade. Like, I remember exactly what years they left the same school that I was in, you know. So I remember a lot from when I was a kid. So if I could remember that much, imagine how much all these other kids remember, you know. And like, with our minds and our memories and stuff working at such a young age, like, frick, a 3-year-old will probably remember exactly what happened to them, you know. People just assume they're too young to even know what the heck goes on with them. Just because you don't, if you're so old and you don't remember that time frame, like, doesn't mean someone else isn't gonna remember it. Maybe you blocked out memories that you don't want to remember. Like, that happens. Like, I've blocked out memories that I don't want to remember, but, you know, that just kind of, what do you call it, like, when you're trying to not remember something, you know, you just don't want to.
You repress the memory?
Yeah. Like, I wasn't just sexually abused, like, I was physically abused, I was emotionally abused, you know. Like, a lot of abuse happened to me, but the main ones that I try to remember is the sexual abuse, because I'm a huge advocate when it comes to sexual abuse. Like, I've never been quiet since high school. Like, since I start learning how wrong it was, I've never been quiet about my sexual abuse. Since that one person, that RA, stepped in and like tried to help me, I've never been quiet. I've always been open. I've always been very vocal about my abuse. Anytime anybody would come to me, like, they knew I was serious about protecting them. They knew I was serious about making sure they were okay, and I would check in on them. You know, I have a bunch of youth that I work with now, and even some young men, like some young boys, who have confided me in about their abuse, and there's some that I know something happened to them, but they just will never speak on it because they're so ashamed. They're just ashamed of what happened to them. They can't believe it happened to them, you know. And I don't fault them for that. Like, that's just how they grew up, you know. They grew up watching other people protect these predators, you know. They grew up thinking like, oh, nobody's gonna believe me. Like, but they respected me. They knew what I was doing. They knew that I was serious about the work that I was doing and the advocating I was doing, and they knew I was like out here protecting other kids from that same abuse that I endured. Like, a lot of these kids know my story, and they know that I'm a very serious auntie when it comes to that kind of abuse. And so a lot of these young men and a lot of these young women respected me for that, and And no matter what, like, yeah, they've fallen down wrong paths, and I've tried to like help some of them go on different paths, you know, choose different paths, because they don't have to go down the lifestyle that their parents or people before them went down. And I've over and over, like, you know, I would preach to them, and I still do to this day. Like, they know when I'm disappointed in them if they do something dumb, you know. But sometimes you just can't reach them if they don't want to be reached. And you know, I don't blame that on myself. Like, I'm planting seeds, you know, and it's up to them whether or not they want to grow those seeds. It's just a matter of their choices and what they want to do.
For somebody who has been raped and hasn't told anybody, or is too ashamed, or whatever the case, does speaking about it help?
Yeah, it's definitely helped me a lot. Like I said, I personally, like, from speaking about it so much and sharing my story, I don't care what anybody has to say about me personally, but I've also had a lot of years of therapy and a lot of years of support from very close friends, even friends that are like living far away. Like, I've had a lot of really great support in that area. So with me speaking about my abuse, like, ain't nobody gonna shame me for coming out with my stories, you know, because I've had that therapy, and I'm in a really good spot. Like, people can say what they want. They don't have to believe me if they don't want to, but that's their choice. Like, if they want to keep enabling that behavior, that's on them. So yeah, I like speaking about my abuse specifically is super, it's really helpful, because I feel like I'm making a difference in bringing awareness to it, but also hoping that other people will be able to find the courage to share their stories, you know, because I do believe that everybody's story matters. The more stories we can get people to share, the more people are hopefully going to pay attention. Like, this is happening all over, like you said. And like, I do, like, whether it's been a couple hours, couple days, weeks, months, years, like, even if it's been 50 years, like, your story matters, because this is a cycle that has been going on for generations and generations. And if we can keep going back all those years of when your abuse happened, like 50, 60, 70 years ago, like, that just goes to show how much has been going on. Like, people think, oh, there can't be that many predators in our area. There can be that many predators. Like, this has been going on for generations, and nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, I'm sure there were like people over the years that have tried to, you know, help stop it, but just haven't been successful. And so, like, I feel that now is the time for like more people to start stepping forward, you know, and they don't have to share their story, but at least share your support in these people that are sharing their stories, you know. The more people that we can get to stand against this predatory behavior, like, the more chances of us stopping it. Like, say you got a drunk friend over here calling out a woman in the bar, like, saying some very derogatory stuff to them, like, call them out on that. Be like, yo, that's not okay for you to be talking to her that way. Like, change the way you speak to her, you know. And that's where a lot of these predators come in. Like, they say all these derogatory terms towards people, and then they try to find like where other people are comfortable at letting them like get away with this kind of stuff. And so, like, they start with the slurs, and they start with like casually, like, just touching or grabbing onto someone, until, like, if nobody's brushing them off and calling them out for that kind of behavior, they're gonna keep testing the waters to see how far they can take it. And then they're gonna eventually acquire their target, basically, just based off the way they approach people. And that's where a lot of the abuse happens, is like, especially for adults, is like when they're drunk or intoxicated or blacked out, you know, the abuse just goes on from there. Like, and people think that, like, just because it happened when they were drunk or blacked out drunk or whatever, you know, high, that it's okay, that nobody's gonna believe them. That's not okay, and people are gonna believe you. You just need to come forward and find the right people, you know. And no matter who it is, whether you live in Belcourt, Dunseith, like, I've had people that used to live here reach out to me, and they live in other states or other cities, and have shared their stories with me about certain individuals, and asked me if I'd be willing to share their predator. And I'm like, absolutely. Like, your story matters. It doesn't matter how long ago it happened. It doesn't matter where you're from or where you live now, like, it happened. Your story matters. Like, even if they didn't live in the area and they wanted me to share their story, like, I would be willing to share their story, you know, just because some people find comfort in just knowing that someone else knows what happened to them. Like, I've had a few people. There was this one that shared her story with me, and she had been assaulted by, like, you know, one of her family members. And then all of a sudden, like, after I posted, like, these predators, her family just went berserk and was like, you know, saying all kinds of negative stuff about me, and whoever shared this was gonna get charges pressed on them for defamation and all this other stuff. And she had reached out to me and was like, everything is really anonymous, right? Like, you don't tell anybody. And I'm like, look, my wife doesn't even look at my messages. Everything is anonymous. Anything that you've said, any part of your story that's shared with me is anonymous. The only thing I post is the predator and their names. And she's like, okay, thank you so much. You really are the only person that's ever, like, taken this seriously and really believed. And she said that means a lot to me. And, like, that really hit me deep, because it made me realize, and it made me, like, you know, it made me realize how much this is needed, like, how much people need that platform to be able to come out and share their story with someone. The unfortunate part of it is, like, there's people that I know personally that were abused and assaulted by someone, but they don't want to come forward because someone in their family or their friend circle was posted on my page, and they don't want to come forward because I posted their family member or friend that was called out for being a predator in someone else's story. And so they don't want to come forward because they think that what I'm doing isn't right. And I'm like, why do we want to keep protecting these predators? Like, someone abused you and you want to protect someone else's predator? Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
I honestly think it's, again, that fear of, or that shame of it being your family member, or that shame of it being your friend in your friend circle. I really do think it comes down to that shame of it just being someone close to you that you trusted. And now they're being labeled as a predator and you're hanging out with them, so you have to defend them because that's your friend or because that's your family member, you know? I can't do that. Like, if any of my siblings were called out again, like, I would have to call them out, like, because if they hurt somebody, you know, if they scarred somebody, I would want people to be aware of that individual. I have actually a couple of young ones. They're adults now, but they were preyed on when they were younger by older guys, like much older than them, when they were 15, 16 years old. And then they've been with their partners since, you know, very toxic relationships. And what they don't realize is that, like, they were preyed on, and now they're stuck in this relationship with their predator from when they were preyed on. Mm-hmm. They're probably 19, 20, 21, 22 now. But they're stuck with these older guys that they were preyed on by, and not realizing how wrong that relationship is. Like, they were groomed into that relationship, and now they're stuck in this relationship of being beaten and drugged and, like, forced to stay, and they don't know any better. Like, when they try to leave or whatever, they always come back because that's all they know. Like, they think that's the relationship for them, you know, and it's not right. And I just, people.
How do you, like, because I've noticed that too, people are used to abuse, and that makes it, and then they're used to chaos, and when things do stabilize, then they see chaos again. How do you help kids who are coming from abuse come out of that?
It's really difficult. It's just a matter of being there for them, you know, at any point. It's just a matter of listening to their chaos and their stories. Really, the only thing I was ever able to do was just sit there and listen to them and be there for them when they needed me, and hope that, like, one day they'll either take the advice I give them or get the help they need. But really a lot of these young people they really need therapy, they really need counseling, just because of the abuse they endured. Like, you can't get out of that alone. It's too much for an individual. And if they do get out of it, like if they don't turn to drugs or alcohol, they have all this anger built up inside of them, and then they want to take that anger out on anyone and everyone, and it's just really difficult to see that. And I'm witnessing it to this day. Like, some of the young youth that I used to look out for and protect are now older, and now they're wanting to protect themselves or protect other kids and other young people, and they're out here. If you got these predators out here, and everybody knows who a lot of these predators are, especially these kids, because some of them were preyed on by these predators. So you got them out here protecting themselves or sticking up for themselves or other young people, and then you got these predators out here who are getting beat up or still preying on these young. Like, for instance, there was a couple predators that preyed on young girls closer to the younger youth age that I used to protect. They would prey on these young girls, and so then these younger youth would stick up for these young girls, and these older predators would get angry with them, and start taking it out on the youth, and like try to catch the youth by themselves, and then they would jump the youth. And so then when the youth would come back and retaliate, like, these older predators would call up the police and like play the victim and be like, these kids are out here like beating on us, they're out here with shooting at us and like stuff like that, And I don't agree with these kids having to protect themselves, but like I said, like, who else is out here to protect them,
Mm-hmm.
All these adults are literally protecting these predators. Like, nobody wants to believe these kids are in any harm or any danger. They believe these kids are out here being the dangerous ones. But they don't want to believe that these predators are out here preying on all these kids, and these kids are angry because of what the predators did to them when they were younger, or what they're doing to other kids nowadays. Like, they're getting all these young kids hooked on drugs. They're getting all these young kids, like, drinking alcohol, and, like, they're doing all kinds of stuff to these young kids, and it's just being neglected, and people want to blame the parents for it. It's not the parents' fault. Like, they can't control their kids. Especially whenever you got all these other ones out here, like, luring them out and stuff, Or you got the parents believing that, their older son or their older daughter or their older cousins are safe people for their kids to be with. Like, no, nobody's safe. Like, you can't just let your kid go stay at so-and-so's for the night, because you don't know who's there. You don't know where they're going to go or what they're going to be up to, But yeah, so you got, like I said, you got all these predators preying on these young people, and then you got these other young people that are wanting to stick up for themselves and for their young friends, and then you got the system after all these young people for sticking up for themselves. And then, like, right now we've got the police after a bunch of young people for sticking up for themselves. Like, they call them a gang. They're calling these young people a gang. Like, I know some of these youth have guns. Like, I have personally turned in guns to a police officer. I have personally shared where these guns came from. I don't believe in guns myself. Hell, you'll never catch me holding a gun or shooting a gun. Like, I don't believe in them whatsoever. I don't personally think that these kids are a gang. I think they're a group of young people that are sticking up for themselves and protecting themselves and other people. I think they're a group of young people who want to make a change, but they have so much anger and hurt built up inside of them that they're taking it out on the very people that have hurt them and wronged them over the years. And rightfully so. Like, where was the system? Why hasn't the system stepped in? Instead, they want to step in now when all these younger people are finally sticking up for themselves. And they want to arrest the young people instead of going after the people that abuse them or hurt them. And unfortunately, the statute of limitations, according to one of the BIA officers, is only 7 years. So what happens if a 7-year-old gets raped and they come forward at 15? Statute of limitations. Can't do shit.
That's exactly why the system needs to be changed. The system is totally against victims. And then they're going to put the kids in jail and whatever, and then there's no real rehabilitation coming out of jail, and they end up in terrible situations. I mean, it's the whole system here in probably everywhere, I don't know, but in North Dakota, it's totally against people who have been hurt and just need to be healed.
Yeah, I do think that like our community and probably every other community needs better resources for sexual assault. Specifically, I know we have like the domestic violence and people are like, there are programs out there, and I'm like, where? And if there is, they should be more vocal and more active in our community. Like, this is going on all over. Why are people like not doing things? Like, I remember in high school we used to have like, I don't know what they called it, like once a year a lyceum or something where someone would come and speak. But back when I was in school, they would only speak on stranger danger. They would never speak on family danger or friend danger or like
Good touch, bad touch.
yeah, like they've never spoke on anything like that. Like, that's something that we need to bring back into the school systems, but go more in depth and bring it into the police stations and like social services. Like, stuff like this needs to be talked about more in the places where it matters in our systems. Like, yes, we do need to have more education in our system specifically on how to handle these situations and when they're brought up.
So I think we'll wrap it up since time's running. But any advice you have for kids who are being sexually abused right now and might listen to this?
Yeah, so I would say find a trusted adult. Maybe it's not someone in your household. Maybe it's not someone in your close family, friends. But find a trusted adult. It could be in your school system. It could be a police officer. It could be anybody that you feel comfortable enough to talk about the abuse that you endured. Find someone that you can trust. And if they don't do anything about it, keep looking for someone. Like, don't stop looking for someone to believe in you. Because there is someone out there that is going to believe you. There is someone out there that is going to want to help you. So just keep looking. Don't stop.
And as for parents or any caregivers, any advice for if their kid comes and tells them something?
Yes. If you're a parent, caregiver, or anybody, any adult out there that's listening, and if someone comes to you, even if whether it's a kid or an adult that comes to you with a sexual assault or abuse story, always start by believing. Don't ever like question their motive. Don't ever question whether or not they're telling the truth. Just start by believing. Let them know that you're sorry and that you're there for them. Just be by them every step of the way. Help them figure out their next steps. Make sure and write a report on it. And then follow up with those reports. But especially follow up with the survivor or the victim of the assault or the abuse. Don't just leave them hanging by themselves. You're gonna need to be there for them every step of the way so they know that someone is there for them.
Should they go to the police first, or are there any other organizations you're aware of?
I'm not aware of any other organizations. I would definitely recommend go and file a police report first. You don't know if it's a family member that's doing it to the child. And if it is, it's really hard for the child to speak in front of their family members about the abuse, especially if they tried to come forward already. It's really difficult for them to have a family member present when speaking of the abuse. However, I do know that like sometimes police won't talk to a child without an adult present, so maybe even going to social services first, and allowing the child to speak to a social worker at social services could be super helpful.
Where can people find your stuff as far as what you're doing and how to contact you?
Yeah, if you don't feel comfortable sharing your story or anything with anybody else, you can contact me on my personal Facebook page under Tanika Norquay, Tanika Norquay, Norquay. And my profile picture is a teal photo with a teal ribbon that says, "We hear you, we believe you. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And then it's got a cover photo with a rain hotline. And the phone number to that is 1-800-656-4673. The Strong Hearts Native Helpline, 1-844-762-8483. That one is specifically for Native survivors. So, like, those are two numbers that I have personally used, just especially whenever I'm feeling down, and then you get to talk to people that are there just to listen to you and help you out, kind of help you get in a better mental state. So feel free to use those numbers. Feel free to send me a friend request, share your story, and help spread awareness.
There's nothing to be ashamed of, Star. It's not your fault. It's happening to many girls and boys in the place you grew up. When I was with you, I didn't really understand some of the things you were telling me. You used to say I wasn't hearing you. It took me a little while, but I hear you now, loud and clear, and I hear everyone like you. And all I really want is for you and your people to be set free. Miigwech, Tanika, thank you for being one of the few putting yourself on the line to save these kids. Sexual immorality is the most destructive force in this world, and the power behind it is pure evil. If you give that power even a little piece of yourself, it will consume all of you, and it will curse the people you love, and it will destroy generations. At its worst, it will lead to the rapes of children, even by their own family members. This is unthinkable for the ancestors of the Ojibwe, who adhered to a totemic division of the tribe by which you were not supposed to intermarry with members of the same totem due to a close blood relation. Our Creator is calling us back to a holy way, to a pure way. Probably all people on earth have been polluted by our landscape of sexual unholiness. And what has it left us but lust that cannot be quenched, and families that are shattered, and children that are not being loved and taken care of. It's time we sacrifice some of the things we think we need in order to give our children the future they deserve. Jesus is the one who helped me change everything I hated about myself. He helped me escape all the darkness I thought I could never be free of. And all those times I wanted to die, He gave me the strength to live, so I could be here to remind you how much you are truly loved. Gizagan Star.